Hey everybody, welcome back to Sweatpants BI. I hope that you're all having a wonderful start to 2023. If you're like me, anytime we're going from, one year into another year, it's a really good time to revisit your resume. Not that I'm looking for a new job, it's just, at least once a year I do like to go through my old resume, see what needs to be updated, see if there are any major accomplishments or awards or recognition or any new side projects that I started that need to be added to my resume. So this year, I wanted to go ahead and capitalize on something that I've been thinking about for several months, and that is Power BI resumes. And now I'm not talking about just your regular, traditional, boring paper resumes that just contain a lot of references to Power BI, like the kind that I review on a pretty regular basis. I'm talking about actually designing a full resume in Power BI. I've started seeing more and more of these types of resumes shared on LinkedIn. If memory serves, a few months ago, there may have been a challenge by one of the various BI and data companies for encouraging people to use their preferred business intelligence platform to design a resume. I thought that it was a really cool idea. Honestly, some of the resumes that I saw come out of that challenge were just amazing and very inspirational for me. So I've been kind of, thinking in the background for the last couple of months that I would like to get to a point where I have a version of my own resume in Power BI. The holidays around my house are pretty calm, pretty quiet, pretty relaxed, maybe unlike a lot of other households. I had enough time on my hands and freedom to go ahead and finally build my Power BI resume. And I definitely wanted to go ahead and share it with you. Now, before I actually get into showing you the resume that I built in Power BI, I did think that I would take just a couple of minutes at the beginning of the video as someone who reviews a lot of data science and business intelligence and analytics resumes to talk about whether I think a BI resume is even a good idea in the first place. And overall, it's so new. It's such a break from sort of the traditional norms of how we write Power BI or how we write resumes that it kind of gave me pause. I definitely have been trying to kind of think about this for the past few months, and I think that overall I'm in the pro camp. I think that a Power BI report is a really good way to sort of create a more engaging and interactive experience on your history. If you are in the job market or if you're looking for something new and if you are trying to flex your Power BI skills, I think you owe it to yourself to take a swing at building, the most engaging and interactive resume that really represents your talents that you can. If a candidate sent me a resume and it had a link or something to a Power BI version of that resume, I know which one that I would choose. If I could get access to the Power BI resume, that would be the one that I would look at first. That said, obviously a lot of companies in their resume and career platforms, they probably don't make it very easy to upload said Power BI resume other than like maybe being able to attach it as a link. So, do I think that a Power BI report is going to replace a more traditional Word document or PDF of a resume in the near term? I definitely don't. I think that at best, a Power BI resume, in the short term at least, is going to better complement a traditional resume and be a really cool way to sort of flex your Power BI and design sensibilities. But I don't think the traditional resumes are going away anytime soon. So if you have already built one, chances are you've already got a traditional resume. If you are getting ready to build a Power BI or Tableau resume, chances are you've already got a traditional one. And I think you're going to be using both for a while. But I still think it's a really cool idea. Obviously, when you're trying to build a BI tool to serve as a portfolio piece or serve as a resume or serve as an example of what you can do, there's always the chance that that could backfire, that the design or the resume that you create is not going to be the cup of tea of the hiring manager who ends up with that report at their fingertips. Those are things that you can't control at any rate, regardless of whether or not you're trying to create a Power BI resume to be actionable, to serve as a your direct complement to your traditional resume. I still think it's a really cool exercise. It's a really great way to sort of flex your Power BI abilities on something on data that isn't so dry. Building a Power BI resume is obviously building a very different type of report from the types of reports that a lot of us build for our respective employers on a regular basis. I've built probably 1,000 Power BI reports in my career, and building the resume was quite a bit different from anything that I'd ever built before. So it was at the very least a very fun exercise. It's obviously a really good challenge and a good chance to get some different design capabilities in your portfolio. I had a blast with it. Really looking forward to showing you what I've got. Just kind of wanted to give you some food for thought on whether or not Power BI resumes are sort of worth their weight. And I do think that LinkedIn gives us kind of a more I think that platforms like LinkedIn have a lot of room for diversity in how we present ourselves and our professional experience. So, as a complement to the sort of information about ourselves that we put in something like LinkedIn, I think the Power BI resumes are very cool. I'm definitely going to make sure that my Power BI resume is available on my LinkedIn page as sort of, hey, if you're a recruiter and you're looking at me in the future, maybe here's something to sort of show what I can do. And I hope that it would serve that kind of purpose for you as well. So Power BI resumes, let's go ahead and look at what I was able to build in Power BI this week. So here you can see my Power BI resume. And the first thing that I wanted to make sure that I did with this resume was preserve the overall look and feel of a more traditional resume. I didn't want to do something just so bonkers with my design that it became more of a distraction. If I'm a hypothetical hiring manager looking at Sean Chandler's resume, I want to be like, man, this is really cool and really slick, and it also reads super easily. I don't want to look at this and be like, this is really busy and Sean Chandler seems like a dork. So I tried to keep this just as, I wanted to throw some aesthetic flourishes in there to show, hey, somebody who's looking at this, man, Sean Chandler can design really slick, very pleasing to the eye, sorts of things. But the main thing that I wanted to focus on was making sure that this resume was as readable as possible while also flexing just some very general Power BI skills and making sure that I was actually leveraging the interactive capabilities of Power BI in this resume. If all I'm doing is just using Power BI to build a very static, non-interactive resume, then I might as well have just submitted a traditional resume, right? Like I want to build in some of those interactive features that Power BI enables. So, I mean, like as you scroll through this, on the left, I've just got kind of the more high level stuff about me, get to know me stuff. Obviously, who I am, what I do, and I'm proposing a few different ways for somebody to connect with me. I've got a link to my Sweatpants BI YouTube channel. I've got a link to my LinkedIn profile here for anybody who might be interested, so that if somebody clicks on, that on either of those links, they can just immediately, pull up navigation to either of the primary places that I'd like for people to reach me. I've got a little bit of information about my education. I've even got some information here about my hobbies. I personally appreciate it when people submit resumes for my job and they tell me a little bit about who they are outside of work. It's obviously not like something that people have to do, but Power BI opens up so many new options for designing this resume that I decided, hey, it might be cool and it might be fun to just include a section about me that sort of identifies what I'm interested in. Obviously, I listen to a lot of music when I'm building Power BI tools or doing tutorials. I enjoy working out. I don't think it's going to surprise anybody that I've got some artistic, hobbies outside of building Power BI tools. I love reading. I love gaming. And I also really, really enjoy traveling. And so I thought that it might be cool to include a special feature here where I'm talking about my traveling, to enable a tooltip to just come up and let people know, hey, everywhere that I've been so far. Obviously, I've been to the US. I live here. I've been to some of Central America. I've traveled a lot of Europe, both as a student and visiting some of my family through my wife. And I also taught English in South Korea right after my graduate school, and that gave me an opportunity to visit different parts of Asia. So I really enjoy traveling. I've been to, a fair number of countries. That was something that I really wanted to call out, that Power BI allowed me to make much more interactive than how I might have presented this information on a more traditional resume. Over here on the right is where, most of the cool stuff for this interactive resume is located. The first thing that I would imagine people would want to know about me is to get to know my employer history. So here are all of my roles from the past decade. I made kind of this Gantt chart looking thing. I literally made this out of a standard Power BI line chart. There is nothing fancy going on here. I'll probably do a demo later on as to how I turned a line chart into something that looks like this. But it was something cool that I'm actually going to revisit this here in just a few minutes, because once I figured out how to basically turn line charts into Gantt charts and bar charts, I actually used that trick quite a bit in this report. But anyway, I've just got a quick summary visual up here, sort of showing the roles that I've had over the last decade. If somebody's interested in understanding more about those specific roles, they can just go down here and actually see like descriptions, some of the recognition that I received in various roles, and just an overview of the core work that I've performed in those roles. And you may have already noticed these buttons that I've got up here. Obviously, I thought that building a Power BI resume was a really novel way to maybe use bookmarks to sort of walk through the major parts of my resume. So the first view here is the employer history. The next view that I've got here and just kind of walks through my current skill set. Everything from the technical skills that I use on a regular basis. Obviously, at the very top, I'm calling out all of the different Microsoft platforms that I'm using regularly. I call out the fact that, hey, I'm pretty comfortable in SQL, but honestly, R and Python, I consider myself pretty middling. I don't actually use R and Python very often in my job. But I do have a lot of broad exposure to other BI tools. I'm definitely really comfortable in the Microsoft stack. There are some conceptual skill sets that I have that sort of transcend the specific platforms that I use on a regular basis. Things like data visualization, storytelling, modeling data for BI purposes. Figuring out how to tune the performance of my reports so that they're as fast as possible. Things like UX design. I give myself about a 7 on UX design. There are people out there, especially those who actually specialize in UX design, who are still far and above me. But I at least read as much as I can on UX design, and I would definitely consider that a skill, even though it's one that I would say that I'm probably still working on a regular basis to grow. In each of these sections, I also called out like, hey, even though these are, I consider my core skills, here are other tools and skills that I've either used or I'm still learning. I call out some of my recent Microsoft certifications. And then on things like soft skills, I call out the fact that, hey, I do a lot of public speaking, presentations, talent development and management with my team. I've even published a few articles and done a few other YouTube videos for things like Microsoft Mechanics. All of this is, really interesting, useful fodder for a resume that I thought might make sense on, my current skill set and things that are sort of an extension of my current skill set. The next section that I put together just sort of talks about my side projects. Obviously, I thought that it was, as good a place as any to sort of talk about my newest side project, that being Sweatpants BI, to sort of give, somebody the sense of, hey, I'm pretty comfortable speaking on camera. I'm doing a lot of work in that area. And if somebody wanted to actually go through and see a sample of the videos on my Sweatpants BI channel that I'm most proud of, I even created sort of a film strip here, where somebody could just like click on these arrows and sort of go through, a selection of the videos that I've posted so far on YouTube. And if somebody's going through this and they're like, oh, I'm kind of interested in seeing this, video on creating a custom gauge visual, or from a donut chart, all I got to do is just like click on that. It immediately takes me to YouTube, pulls up the video. Or if I'm interested in how Sean built this Maven World Cup Challenge submission, there's the YouTube video. And I'm going to walk through a little bit more on how I actually implemented some of these features. But I thought that was a pretty cool idea to sort of walk someone through some of my Sweatpants BI videos without taking up a ton of space. I have a lot of other teaching experience that I've accumulated over the last decade that I wanted to call out. Just things like, I've built a Udemy course. I've got a Udacity course that's been going strong for more than 2 years now. And prior to that, I spent the better part of a decade just doing college test prep in my community, and going even all the way back to my first formal teaching job as a visiting English teacher in South Korea. And since I had a little bit of space left at the bottom of the page, I even mentioned a little bit about some of the volunteering work that I'm doing more recently. And then finally, the last view that I created was just a quick glimpse of my Power BI portfolio, some of the major pieces that I've worked on in recent years. I've got a link here to my Maven Space Challenge and Maven World Cup Challenge submissions. I've even got a section down here that goes into some of my other Power BI contest submissions, including the recent Enterprise DNA football transfers competition, and even a cryptocurrency contest in 2021 hosted by Power BI Elite. So if somebody was interested in learning a little bit more about any of these, no problem. All they have to do is just hover on any of these images, and if they see one that they're interested in learning more about, they just have to click on an image. Bam, there's a walkthrough that I put together in YouTube so that somebody could, learn a little bit more about those projects instead of just seeing, snapshots of my portfolio. And, that's pretty much everything that I've got currently for this resume. I threw this together in, a couple of days, just as an experiment, but honestly, I'm pretty happy with how it turned out. I may even actually start using this resume in some applications. This wasn't honestly my plan. My plan was to just quickly build a Power BI resume so that I could do a YouTube video on it and maybe post it on LinkedIn. But I was pretty happy with how it came out. So yeah, I might actually deploy this in some capacity. But getting out of the online version and kind of going into Power BI, as far as how I actually built some of these features, obviously, anybody who's watched any of my videos is not going to be surprised by the fact that most of the templates and layouts were just done in PowerPoint and exported as images. Again, PowerPoint's kind of what I use right now as my primary layout design, just because I'm super comfortable with it. I can do things extremely quickly in PowerPoint, export them as gigantic images, bring those images into the background of my Power BI tool, and then just sort of overlay my data visuals. So I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time talking about that further. I've got other videos on my YouTube channel where I talk about how to use PowerPoint and Power BI sort of interchangeably for layouts. But, you can kind of see here, almost everything on the left is static. It doesn't really change as as users navigate through the different bookmarks. Over here, since I'm using bookmarks in this section, this gets a little bit more dynamic. So I created some other views here that I export as separate images, like all of these objects here that make up sort of my skills history. I export this section, literally just these visuals. I export these as a separate image that I can then overlay some of the bar charts that you saw. And then my portfolio is obviously also just made out of images that I export. And then once I have those images exported into Power BI, my main thing for sort of creating links and sort of tying together that interactive component is then I just take, buttons, and I'll usually just take like a blank button and turn off all of its properties. In other words, get rid of any fill options, get rid of any outlines, just drop a fresh, button into your report, go into style, make sure that like text, icon, border, all of that's turned off. Just go to your action settings and turn on web URL. And then that's where I just created these sort of invisible overlays that also serve as hyperlinks. So that when somebody clicks on, say, this Maven World Cup Challenge submission, it pulls up the YouTube link. That's all I'm doing. On some of these, I'm just using text boxes in Power BI for the actual text, obviously. And for these line chart visuals, like I said, this was honestly the coolest thing that I did that was kind of new for this resume. But I'm going to do another video sort of walking through how I did the line charts. But the main trick here was just sort of setting up the small data set in such a way that that I was able to use the series label feature to sort of create these axis features. You actually can't use a categorical field in the y-axis property of a line chart currently. But if you're smart about how you set up your data for this, you can actually turn on your series labels and sort of get a very similar effect. So again, I was really happy with how this turned out. I'm using the exact same trick to create these horizontal bar charts that you see here. Again, these are line chart visuals and not like something that I imported or a third-party marketplace visual. I just sort of set the data up in such a way that I could use line charts for this and just increase the thickness of the lines about as high as they go, and then just sort of organize them this way. I was pretty happy with how that came out. For everything else on here, again, bookmarks are just sort of tying all of this together for some of the more interactive properties. If I turn on my bookmarks pane, you can see for this video reel, I created 4 different bookmarks that are just controlling what's happening in this section. And even though, it creates this effect of me sort of scrolling through things, like you'll notice that, each item here sort of moves to the left as I click on it. All of these are just different combinations of bookmarks. When I go from this first view to the second view here, literally I have 2 versions of this image that you're seeing here. And clicking this button gets rid of one image and makes the other visible. And it just repeats that exact same process, creating sort of a scrolling effect. The reason that I thought that this video reel effect might be useful for this report, honestly, is just because I wanted to give somebody, 5 examples of the YouTube videos that I'm creating on Sweatpants BI, but I was having a hard time figuring out how to fit, 5 images of those YouTube videos all on the page at the same time. So I decided, really, I guess all I need to show is 2 at a time, but then just create an interface that will let the user sort of toggle back and forth between what they want to see. These arrows that are allowing users to scroll are, again, just buttons. That allowed me to do some hover capabilities on here so that, when the user hovers, they go from sort of gray to purple. You can see, not too complex, works pretty well. And that is my Power BI resume. Again, if you're someone out there who's considering building a BI resume, I think that it could be a really interesting and useful complement to your traditional resume. Definitely something worth putting on your LinkedIn profile, to where if any potential recruiters or hiring managers come across your LinkedIn profile, they have a more interactive and dynamic version of your resume and your skill sets that they can really play with. I mean, that could be a real game changer for you. So whether or not I think building a Power BI resume is a useful exercise, I think it is, as long as you're building that resume with your eyes open. And by that, I mean, just don't expect any kind of BI tool resume to be a replacement for a traditional resume anytime soon. I think that your traditional Word document or PDF sort of style resume is still going to be your go-to a lot of the time, and is going to be required for almost any job you could hope to get in the near term. So I definitely think that you need to make sure that that is on point and absolutely just meticulously edited before you really worry too much about your BI resume. Honestly, I think that a BI resume currently is just a really cool and fun opportunity to sort of flex your Power BI skills, show that you can use Power BI sort of creatively and out of the box, and that not everything has to be your more boring or vanilla style data, that you can take the Power BI concepts and use them in a completely different design environment, still to great effect. That's why, like, again, if somebody were applying for a job on my team and they had a Power BI resume, I would approach that not just as a resume, but also a really valid portfolio piece, sort of showing, hey, I can give this person an out-of-the-box Power BI project, and they'll be able to just knock it out of the park. So I had fun with it. I hope that you have fun. If you decide to build a BI resume, at the end of the day, I think that that's primarily what it is. It's an opportunity to have some fun. Later on in the year, I do hope to do some more videos sort of around, like, what do I look for in Power BI resumes? I'll give you sort of some tips and tricks for your own BI resumes. At the end of the day, I can tell you that my opinions on resumes are, sort of just my own. At the end of the day, every hiring manager, every panel that is going to potentially interview you or look at your resume, they're all looking for different things. So one thing that I always try to tell people is, don't stress your resume too much. Have fun with it. Make sure that it's meticulously edited, obviously free of typos. Make sure that it's not plagiarized. Make sure that everything on there is unique to you, represents your own voice and your own experience. But at the end of the day, if you're going to build a BI thing, just have fun with it. So I hope you found that useful. Thanks again so much for checking out Sweatpants BI. I'm already working on a ton of exciting new videos for 2023. Hope you're having a wonderful January. And if you're in the States, or if you're in somewhere that has colder climates this time of year, I hope you're staying warm like I am. Thanks so much, everybody. I will see you next week in my next Sweatpants BI video.